So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cardano Community Podcast. Today's guest is Darren. Darren is a blockchain advisor. He is the man definitely you want to be speaking to. So, Darren, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
So, Darren, today we've learned, that you've been around in blockchain space for a pretty long time. I mean, it's 2011, right?
That's right.
And if I'm correct, you also advised Emurgo and also advised IOHK. So today, let's just get a little bit about, the background of, if we go all the way back from the beginnings of 2017, 2018, and your work as an advisor with Emurgo. How did that go? What are your impressions?
Okay, well, I mean, it seems like a long time ago. They count years in dog years, or you have crypto years, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
I just realized the other day that this is my 9th year working on crypto and blockchain, so
Wow.
almost dead.
Yeah. Wow.
So I was lucky. I'd been in the space for a while. I've done a bunch of things anywhere on the crypto exchange side, brokerage, payments, and this was the first time I'd actually worked with a protocol. And how did I get involved? Well, I got introduced through a person that I'd met at a money transfer conference in Miami in 2015, who introduced me to these guys in Japan that were involved in this thing, and I had to do a bunch of research, and I had no idea what it was about. So they introduced me to this thing called Cardano. There was very little documentation. There was very little knowledge on it, and basically, from an outsider's perspective, it was kind of being built not in secret, but without any fanfare at all. And so this was late 2016. 2016. So my first call when I first heard about Cardano was I had a call with Mr. Ken Kodama, who you guys might know, and Mr. Alex Hayashi. And so I was learning about this Cardano thing, and it was like a speck in the map. And so it kind of reminded me of when I first got introduced to Bitcoin. So I guess let me roll back really quickly to Bitcoin. It was 2011. I was in Chile, and just randomly some expat friends said, we're starting a Bitcoin exchange. And I said, what's Bitcoin? And at that time, there was no knowledge. So the pitch was, it's like peer-to-peer crypto anarchy BitTorrent for money. And I said,
For money.
excuse me, what is that? So, no one knew how to pitch Bitcoin at that time because no one knew what it was. So I had to do my own research. I studied all weekend, and I told these guys, okay, I'm in. He pitched me on Friday. I was in on a Monday, and that was the time that Bitcoin it had gone from $3 to $32, and then on the trek back down from $32 to $2.50. So it was like learning Bitcoin for the first time was like hearing about Cardano. So there wasn't very good documentation. Not really too many people knew what was going on. And so I wasn't sure what to think about it, to be honest. I just gotten out of a startup. I closed my payment startup, BitNexo, and was looking for new projects. And I really wanted to be selective and find the best project. So I did a lot of research, and I spent a lot of time trying to figure it out. So I first heard about it in October. And then I met this guy in Shanghai, a guy named Charles Hoskinson. I think many of you guys have heard of him. And I wasn't sure what to think before, because you read a lot online, right? So yeah. I was reading a lot, trying to figure out first what other people are saying about him, and second from the man himself. So I the first time I'd heard of Charles was the Ethereum Classic split, yes, where the former CEO of Ethereum backed Ethereum Classic. And exactly. To be honest, I've been on panels about Ethereum Classic, and the DAO hack, and the whole idea of we're in this in Coda's law. And so the first time I heard about Charles was much earlier, and I liked it. I liked exactly what he was backing, but I didn't know much. And then you go read online, you find that people are, especially in the crypto space, either angels or demons.
Yeah.
And then
Sure.
I met him in person, and he gave the pitch about Cardano. He gave the pitch that you guys all know very well right now: interoperability, scalability, and sustainability, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Correct.
so these are all things that were, I mean, in the crypto space, we've been looking at it for a long time. One, the transaction limits. How does one chain talk to another? Also, I mean, you look at things like the Bitcoin Foundation, which had some very early issues. You have this disconnect between the incentives for the developers, like Bitcoin cores. I mean, how
Yeah.
they get funded through donations. So you have all these disconnects, and he presented all these things like the perfect puzzle, the perfect answer to the problem.
Hmm.
And I thought it was actually ridiculously crazy because it's like trying to swallow the elephant in one. And so we were talking, and I told him that I had my big britches on, and said, I think you guys are trying to swallow the whale in one. And he looked at me and said, you know what? We are.
Yeah.
But you know what happens if we try to do this and we fail and we only get one of them? Well, that's a big, big market. And I said,
Well,
that's a good point.
yeah.
At that time, IOHK had about 30 employees. I think, when I went to the IOHK summit, they had over 230 now.
Yes. Exactly.
So that's pretty crazy testament, one, to the vision of Cardano, the vision of Charles, the ability, his ability to gather people around him,
Yeah.
and especially to grow a team during a bear market. So that was kind of how I met them. And first we were engaging. We were trying to figure out, kind of what the project needed help with. So I met the guys. Finally, came back and met them in Japan in I think this was February of 2017.
Hmm.
And I started working actually between all three organizations between IOHK, Cardano Foundation,
Hmm.
and what would later become Emurgo. And so it was kind of I guess, entrepreneur in residence type role, or like an in between.
Yeah.
So first was to try to, I had three major tasks. One was to figure out how to clean up communication between the entities. The second was basically giving kind of a vision and brand to the venture wing. And the third was, kind of helping to create a community.
Yeah.
So, that said, I kind of want to turn this back on you and ask you, because this is the Cardano community podcast, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And you are part of the Cardano community. How do you hear about Cardano?
Now, very simple. I mean, here in the office, I told you where I work, and everyone knows me as Cardano. Oh, blockchain,
Okay.
you need to speak to Denisio, and because he knows everything about blockchain and he knows everything about, Cardano, etc. At home, yeah, my wife can't really hear much anymore because almost everything out of my mouth is Cardano, Cardano, so wherever I get the opportunity, basically, to, like, let's say, spread the gospel of Cardano, I do.
Mm.
So I am very passionate, about this project. I mean, yeah, how I started out was very simple. I just, kind of like looked at all of the different projects, and the reason why Cardano kind of stood out for me is because the fact that they had, they were building the option of land registration, and they were very open and, about that. And being that my family was kind of in a situation where we're having problems with land and stuff registration, that's the reason why I decided, hey, this is the only project that I'm going to put my attention to. And the fact, that the things that they're building, the fact that it's, based on science, and myself, I'm really into mathematics. I had an interview with Lars, and basically I told him, hey, we understand the way the universe works because of mathematics. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
hey, why not use that to perfect and develop a really good working product? So yes, I am definitely passionate about Cardano and no other one.
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool. That's really cool. It's a beautiful kind of story, and it's kind of a great tie-in. Do you mind where you were mentioning about the land registrations, like where you'd seen this as issues,
Yeah,
as problematic?
correct.
Okay. So basically, Charles had this vision of Cardano being the software stack for the developing world financial system, and that's a big vision.
Yes, definitely.
But it's something you can get behind. I mean, this is the thing. Like something like land registration. If you come to Western Europe, North America, you don't have so many issues with that, and so people actually, and that's most of the wealthy crypto community, to be honest, is in those demographics, but they don't understand these fundamental problems. So when I visited Indonesia first with with Murasaki, who is now the CEO of Emurgo Indonesia, and one of the first people that we talked about, they were talking about like there's issues with land registries.
Yeah. Oh.
Why? You have property disputes. You have people that you can pay off. You have all these different kind of issues. And there's some things that you can solve with, let's say, geospatial mapping. But it's land registries. It's the pen and paper itself that's the issue.
Yes.
And this is something that many blockchain companies have focused on.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite actually companies in the space is Factum. Very simple business. They do documents and registration. They have paying customers. They have governments that are paying them. A blockchain with a business model, which is quite crazy and it's simple. But it's a great use case, and of course you want to do it on the best blockchain. So. Actually, going back, so this whole idea of the vision of the financial stack for the developing world it's a huge vision. So when we were looking for kind of what's a goal and a vision for Emurgo, actually, so one from a kind of a business competitive approach. When you're in Asia, especially East Asia, you want to go kind of something neutral. So we're looking at something like a Latin route. Similar to Cardano, Cardano having an Italian heritage, and looking for maybe a Latin route. So we're looking at, something to emerge, like something coming out of nothing, right? So something to grow up. And that was the generation of Emurgo. So I set up the first brand and then wrote the text for the website and the designers. We pumped it out in 2 or 3 weeks. And that was like one of the first building pieces to, figure this out. You had a bunch of people. You had Richard Wild and John O'Connor and Carlo Vicari. These guys were working on the Cardano Hub website, which became Cardano.org now. And so you had all these huge collaborative efforts. Actually, what were they doing? They were helping set brand and identity and documentation behind this project, so that the world would see. So other people didn't go through the issue that I had. So we were basically in charge of the launch strategy. So this was so people avoided the problem that I had, which is I said, "What's Cardano?" And I looked it up online and I couldn't find anything, right? But it turns out at that time, I don't remember how many papers the IOHK had, but they already had 12 PhDs on staff. They had all these papers and all these research, and no one knew about it. And I thought this was quite a ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
Right? You have all these ridiculously smart people that are pumping out research. They're building the most beautiful machine that you can build, and no one knows about it, right?
Yeah.
But to be honest, that's not IOHK's job. This is why it was a federated system to from the beginning. So it was kind of this launch team's job to kind of pick up the community. To basically figure out how to announce it to the world.
Yeah.
So if you put it in perspective, February 2017, it was the time that this kind of this rise of the crypto bubble was starting to build, right? Correct. And so you also had this ICO fever. And so you had these crazy raises coming out. So first, it was a $20 million raise and a $15 million raise, then a $200 million raise, and then a $500 million and a $4 billion raise. So what happened was, the world was starting to catch kind of blockchain or crypto fever, and Cardano was kind of it had the chance to be drowned out because the settlement layer hadn't been released yet. So at the beginning, we were thinking out, how do you get people to fall in love with something beautiful without having to shout? So imagine that at that time, everyone is imagine you're in a room. Everyone's shouting about their favorite blockchain, about their favorite, altcoin XYZ. If you shout, you can't shout louder than the other person. And if you shout, you're playing the same game as everyone else, and everyone gets drowned out, and it gets tied up in this. And so, I think it was Jeremy Wood. He said, guys, we're going to do this slowly approach. So what we did is we took all the things, make sure that they were well documented, put them out, got them into the hands of the right people, and set out breadcrumbs. So another funny thing happened during this time. So this was August, September 2017. This was when the SEC made an announcement, made one of their first announcements, about checking out ICOs.
Yes.
The exchanges got kicked out of China, and all these crazy things were happening. So what happened was the exchanges started freezing up.
Yeah.
But what was Cardano? Sorry, another one of my responsibilities was getting us listed on exchanges, and that was actually a crazy task. Okay. The Wild West, frankly, there are some exchanges that were not, I would say, ethical in their approach, but we had a great relationship with Bittrex.
Bittrex, yes, one of the first.
Bittrex was the first.
The first, yeah.
And Bittrex, heard about the vision. They knew about Charles, and they said, we want to do this because it's an amazing project.
Yeah.
So it was a crazy time. John O'Connor, the Cardano wouldn't have launched in time if it were not for John O'Connor, who did the last minute negotiations.
Wow.
But basically by the structure and by the documentation and by the work, the hard work of the team, and the structure of Cardano, it was able to pass through all these compliance filters that Bittrex had a 2-month lock on. And so Cardano came out. It was the first project to be launched on Bittrex after 2 months of no projects.
Wow.
And so it came out, and it did exceptionally well. It was completely organic. It was kind of a crazy thing. So I was actually in Korea at that time, in Jeju, and I woke up. I was up early in the morning to watch this thing hit the market, and I couldn't believe my eyes. It was an insane thing, and then I got to read the troll box, and so one of the crazy things is, everyone from that crowded room was yelling and shouting and said, "What is this? What is this coin? What is Cardano? What is ADA? I want this listed. I want my coin listed. What is this?" And people were upset because they had no idea what it was.
Yeah, it's like
However,
this just coming out all of a sudden out of the blues,
Yes. Yeah. So it had this great effect that it really forced people to understand, there's a reason that this project is getting listed over all the other ones that have been heavily marketed to you. Yeah. For the past year. There's a reason that it can get through. Yeah. After all these exchanges really tightened up their listing procedures, and through the breadcrumbs, people had to start going through the breadcrumbs, finding the research, and falling in love with the project. Yeah. And that really kickstarted the Cardano community, and so I think that effort was really kind of the start of how the Cardano community was born.
Yeah. Darren, I know we have a schedule for the second one.
Yeah.
We'll go much more into the evolution of blockchain. Let's kick off on that one, and stay tuned. The room is reserved by someone else, so that's why.
Okay.
Okay, take care. Okay, take care. Bye.